less is more. Be simple. You need to sell the client what the client needs and try to think of it in simplistic ways. Listen to the client. They're the ones paying the bill. Mm-hmm. So it's not your movie. You want to express your ideas and you want to express them with confidence, but you don't want to shut down when they're rejected. This is a very difficult business and it's niche. You have to find your place to fit in. Hey, everybody. I'm Rick Page. I'm a director of photography and director. I am known for things like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And last year I did HBO's The Sex Lives of College Girls and NBC's current show, Grand Crew. Right now I'm working on a new show for Netflix called Blockbuster, and I'm really happy to talk with you today.
Rick Page, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
I really am excited. You have such a deep resume, and I want to give this audience a sense of who you are, even more broadly than your wonderful intro. Like I always say, this is the internet. So if you find something that I'm reading to be no longer accurate or completely inaccurate, feel free to amend to that or correct me. Rick Page is a director of photography in television and film known for Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Sex Lives of College Girls, Grand Crew, and multi-award winner in Uncandid Portrait. Starting 30 years ago as a camera assistant, Rick's extensive career spans television, feature films, commercials, IMAX, music videos, documentaries, and web series. In 2014, Rick co-created the web series Made It Right Here, produced in partnership with Maxwell House Coffee. He shot, directed, and co-produced the 10-part series that featured American-made products, artisans, and communities across the country, including right down here in Nashville. Can't wait for you to come back. The series garnered 5.6 million views across AOL.com and YouTube and the broader internet. That number's probably much bigger now. Growing up in Buffalo, New York, Rick started making films in high school and later graduated with a BA in film studies from the University of Utah, earning scholarships and awards for his student films. Concurrently, he learned lighting, camera operating, and directing while working at the PBS affiliate KUED in Salt Lake City. Rick, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do I get into this conversation? Where's a great starting point? Where's a place to jump off? And spending the last week in the world of Rick Page, I came to realize that you are a humble servant of the creative, that you're somebody who loves to give back. And it's really important for you to share what you've learned throughout your career and give it to people who would love to do this or just getting into it or want to get into it. And so I thought I would start by asking you who George Greiner is and what he means to you.
Oh my God. George Greiner is like, you could have picked one of the most near and dear friends to my heart. George is a director of photography, long retired. In fact, he just celebrated his 74th birthday yesterday, and we had a lovely conversation. George and I met when I was a loader. I was brand new into the business, and he had come in on an extra camera. We were working on this pilot in Salt Lake City. And I took to George right away because he was just so darn kind. He didn't come in with any sort of pretension, any ego. And I'll never forget this. He was asking one of the operators, like, how's the biz? And I thought, oh, that must be how people talk in Hollywood. How's the biz? And we didn't, as a loader, I was on the sort of the bottom of the ladder of the camera department on that film. On that project. And so I didn't work that closely with George other than grabbing, a battery for his camera and helping the second give, hand a mag off to the first with fresh film and taking the exposed film and that sort of thing. But I remember George being just so kind and so nice. And not long after that, we ran into each other again on another project. And then we found ourselves early in my career. This is around 96. I was on a TV show called Promised Land. And George and I were paired up on the B camera. I was the key second on that show and had been bumping up to B camera first when we would have B camera, and George would come in. And God, George taught me everything back in those days. He really was sort of the founding father of my career when it comes to cinematography, because he taught me focus pulling. He taught me composition. He taught me light. He taught me color correction. He taught me everything. We would spend hours and hours on the truck waiting for a 2-camera shot. And that whole time was education. It was like college on the set. And then when we were on set, you know, he would train me. He worked really hard to get the best shot that he could get and service the show and the director of photography. But all the while he was training me and helping boost my confidence and help me to learn from my mistakes. And we spent years together in that capacity as operator and first. And then we did some independent projects together where I was stepping up and directing and he was shooting for me. And so we were collaborating as partners. And, you know, over time, we just became really close friends and know each other's families very well. And I feel like I owe everything to him. He gave me one of his very first spectrometers that I have on my shelf in my office at home. And he also gave me, which still works, and I bring it with me to every single set, sort of as my good luck charm, is his color meter. Because I just, you know, we don't really use color meters too often anymore with digital cinematography, but I just love having it with me, you know, because a little bit of George is with me. So George is, he's the bee's knees. I got really, really lucky, you know, meeting him and becoming friends and training under him. He's a special person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's something about someone who really knows you or who gets to really know you, and they just get it. Yeah, I'm a musician. I've been playing piano for a long time, and I have a friend that just gave me a belated Christmas gift, and it was an old Yamaha metronome. Like the kind that just swings back and forth and ticks.
Yeah.
And then you can change it to 3/4 or 6/8, and then it can ding different ways. And you know, is it something that you need in a digital world when you have a DAW system, you know, digital, you know, workspace? No, you don't need it. But I sit it right out there on my piano. I look at it, and it's such a personal gift. And he had a little note that went with it and said, for the person who keeps us all on beat.
It's so great. I mean, having those nostalgic items to me is such a wonderful celebration of history, of knowing where things started. And to me, it serves as a tremendous sense of, you know, inspiration and helps me be creative. When my father passed in 2005, my brother and I were going through all of his things, and we found 2 of his old 35 millimeter cameras with lenses intact. And in fact, I think there was film in there.
Wow.
And my brother immediately was like, "Oh, Rick, you got to have these." And I was like, "You sure you don't want to split them up?" And he's like, Dad loved photography. You're a cinematographer. You need to have these. And they sit proudly on my shelf. You know, it's great to sort of collect these things over the years and know where we've come and know that you're adding to that history. You know, I often get not made fun of, you know, people at work have a good time with the fact that I am always the sort of the history buff of the studio a lot wherever we're shooting.
Right.
And I'm like, do you realize you walk through this gate that this is where John Wayne was, and Cary Grant walked over there, and Jimmy Stewart and Katharine Hepburn was right here under these rafters, you know, can you believe it? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? You know, and I love that, because it's so exciting to think we're stepping into hallowed ground. You know, it's like, does your dentist go to their building and go, "God, I really love working in this building. This is just such a neat place." Like, you know,
No.
it's something that I love. I love the idea that we're being able to create history. That's one of the reasons why I love, like, this current show that I just wrapped on, Grand Crew. The creator, Phil Augusta Jackson, you know, he I feel is really come on to something very strong and very fresh and contemporary. And I feel like we're making history. You know, we're getting to all come together and collaborate and make new history and we happened to shoot that show down at Paramount, and which is already rich with all kinds of history, but now we're making new history, and I really appreciate that. It just helps me. It helps me stay humble. It helps me stay grounded and grateful for the profession that I get to enjoy working in so much. When you learn to appreciate all facets of the industry.
Yeah, we're kindred spirits in that way. I've been a fan of history since even before college. And I'd be that guy that said the history in a group of friends in my 20s and be a little embarrassed about it and worried, am I getting on anyone's nerves with this? And now that I'm older, I'm like, I don't care. I'm not changing. Like, this is who I am.
Be you.
Yeah, I like it too much. I'm just going to do it. And, that's just the way it's going to be. And, the thing about keeping yourself, humbled is so important because, and I've told this story before for people who've listened to the Make It podcast, but this is a business where you're compared so often and you need attention. Attention is a driver of revenues. So you can get down, anxiety can get you sometimes. And anytime that happens, I call my dad, who my mom passed in 2007, but I'm so glad to have my dad still around. And I just tell him how I'm feeling. And he said, Chris, remember, you're one person of 8 billion on a single rock hurling around the sun in one universe of over 1 million.
Crazy.
And for some reason, it just completely calms me down when he says it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can, my ego is flattened at that moment and I just keep moving forward. You talked about your dad dabbling in still photography. What was his influence on you? Is this a coincidence that you became a cinematographer, or is this really influenced by your dad?
Well, I think he was part of it. I think that, for me, it started very young. First off, I always credit the Christopher Reeve's version of Superman 1978.
I'm named after Christopher Reeve. Real story. Sorry.
For real?
I really am. My mom thought he was sexy, and he used to be in soaps in the 70s.
I love it. Well, I'm 1978. I'm 6 years old, and my folks were divorced. I was very young, and my dad would go to my dad's on the weekend, and he took us to see this movie. My brother was he would have been 3 at the time, so I doubt he remembers this. But I remember seeing that film plain as day. I can to this day remember sitting in the Palace Theater in Lockport, New York, watching this movie, and I remember saying to him, "How are they making this happen? How is he flying?" He said, "What do you mean? He's Superman." I said, "No, I know, but." But how is he flying? He says, "Well, it's his cape. It's his red cape." I said, "No, but how is he flying?" He said, "Well, I think the sun gives him the power." I said, "No, how is he?" Like, I had the wherewithal at 6 years old to understand this was a magic trick. And I wanted to know who was responsible for it. How were they making this happen? I immediately was impressed by the magic of film, I think, back then. And then in grade school, my brother and 2 friends of ours, we were big into comic books. And so we would come up with our own, we would draw our own comic books. We'd come up with our own superheroes, and we would come up with stories. We would ditto them. This was long before Xerox, the old ditto machines with the blue ink, dating myself. And we would sell them for $0.25, at school. And I think that was sort of my early influence as a visual storyteller. Couple that with my dad, again, on the weekends, he loved photography. He loved learning. He was self-taught, and he would figure out, how do I shoot stars? How do I get a bird in motion? How do I shoot, wonderful scenery? And how do I do things? His big thing was always getting me and my brother to point at something, but he loved like nature photography. That was his thing. And I don't remember as a child being particularly impressed with photography. I don't remember immediately going, "Oh yeah, I got to learn how to do this." But there were little hints here and there. Like also in 6th grade, we had a photography class where we actually had to make a book, and in doing so, we had to shoot the film, develop it, process it in the bath, print the pictures, assemble them in a book. And I think, there were always these little things that were reaching out to me, tugging me along the way, saying, this is where you're going. This is what you need to do. And so, my dad was certainly there. And as a consequence, when I did get into the film business and I was heavily into camera, he was like my biggest cheerleader, next to my wife. He was always the one, in the corner championing me the whole way, and I think there was probably a part of him that was really proud that it was the camera that I gravitated to, I think
was your
so.
mom equally supportive?
She was an artist in her own right. I mean, she was more into things like fabrics and like she was really good at sewing and that sort of thing. So, I feel like my brother and I, we definitely got artistic genes, handed down to us. My brother went into acting for a while. That he sort of gravitated towards in front of the camera, and on stage during college and just after college. And then he went into pharmaceuticals and decided to make a real living.
Look, for anybody that's an artist that goes out and has to make a quote unquote real living, they have to admit that the only reason they're doing that is so they have enough money to go back into art. Well,
that was it. I mean, I know he'd love to act any day of the week. He just, he's a big fan too. He will often, love to, what are you working on now? How is so-and-so? Tell me about, Andre Braugher. What's he like? I want to come see the set. Like he still wants to get involved. I can tell.
I'm rooting for him already. I've known so many guys like your brother, and it's just up to you. You just got to take the first step.
That's right.
Take the first step.
That's right.
I was surprised to find out, that you went to University of Utah, because I don't think anyone out of the 100+ interviews we've done has gone there for film. So why Utah from New York, upstate New York?
Yeah, it's not like, NYU, UCLA, USC, Utah. It's not it's not part of the conversation. Well, my wife loves this conversation because, so I went to high school. My brother and I moved to Maryland. He was at the beginning of high school. I was mid high school. So I actually lived outside of Baltimore for 3.5 years. And that's where I caught the bug for filmmaking. I was in high school and, I was running track, and my buddies and I, were all good pals. And a couple of them were in an AP English class, and they wanted to do this little film project. And they said, "Hey, you know how to run a VHS camcorder, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so. I can figure it out anyway." And they said, "Well, there's one at the media library. Let's check it out. You be the cameraman." And I was like, "Great." And so we shot this little tongue-in-cheek cop thing. And then they were like, "Well, how are we going to edit this together?" And none of us had a clue. But see, back in those days, if one wanted a copy of a movie, one would get 2 VCRs, rent a movie from, say, a Blockbuster, put it in a play deck, hit record on the other deck, and you'd have a copy of a movie. It wasn't legal, but that's what we did.
Just like cassettes.
So I thought to myself, all right, well, what's to keep a guy from hitting record, pause, fast forward on the tape to another shot, unpause, record a little bit, pause it again.
Brilliant, Rick.
Boom, editing. And it was great. And I thought that I had reinvented cheese. It was like, this is amazing. And so we put together this little thing. I think it was 20 minutes or a half hour, showed it to class. And I remember at the time, we sort of had this little rival with the preppy, there were these rich kids who drove BMWs to work. None of us, we all walked to school. These guys all drove to school. They had BMWs and rich parents, and they played lacrosse, and they loved it. We brought the classroom down in tears and laughter. And I remember at that moment, I was like, that's it. This is all I have to do. I have got to make films. This is everything to me. So cut to all my buddies. We graduate high school. They all go off and one of them went on a track scholarship. A bunch of them were really smart. They were going off to these Ivy League schools, and I was stuck in Maryland. And I was going to the University of Maryland, whose film program was quickly fizzling out. And I thought, I got to get out of here. I need to do something. And I couldn't afford to go to NYU, nor did I have the SAT scores to do so. But I had a really high GPA. I couldn't get into UCLA or USC. And at that time, we're talking, 1990. So, there wasn't as many resources available. You didn't have to go to film school to get into the business, but to me, I wanted to go to college. And so I was dating a girl who was still in high school, who was looking at the University of Utah for dance school. And lo and behold, that ended up being like, I was looking at the brochures. I was like, well, this is a really pretty place to live. I mean, it looks great. It's close to LA. Looks like they have a good film program. BYU, which was down the road, even though their films were mostly geared towards the church, the Mormon church, they had a pretty popular film program there with lots of gear and everything. And I found out that Salt Lake City was a filming town. There was a lot of film production going on there. So it just made sense. I got into school and very quickly got a scholarship because I showed the films that I'd made in high school. And I was taking initiative in the dorms, and I was making little promo videos for the dorms. And that was getting me scholarships in the film department. And then I was working at the PBS station. And it ended up being a real stroke of luck and genius on the part of finding it, because it really worked out to my advantage. And then I got into the business there. That's really kind of where I started working as a camera assistant before moving to Los Angeles. So
yeah. Utah and Colorado and that whole area have a handful of really prestigious festivals, and
they do. That was at the beginning. When I was there, it was sort of the beginning of Sundance, and now it's just completely huge. Right. It's blown up. But yeah, I mean, back in those days, it seems like that was before Albuquerque and Santa Fe, and it was before Atlanta. Wilmington was a big filming hub. Chicago, of course, Salt Lake City, LA, and New York. Like, those were the places to be. And Salt Lake City at that time, before state tax incentives, it was a right to work state. Oh. And so productions were coming up all the time, mostly from Los Angeles, and they were either union or non-union, but they were so close to LA. And in Salt Lake is a terrific place to film a project, because you've got city, you've got mountains, you've got desert, and it's all very close. And during those days in the 90s, I don't know how it is now. I haven't been there in so long, but there were a lot, there were a lot of very talented crew members there, so it was a booming town. And so it worked out really well for me. I found myself really, really happy with my choice of college, and I enjoyed going there. And that's where I met my wife. So
yep. Can't complain about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Can you be a great cinematographer without also being a great lighting expert? Yes.
And here's why. And I know that a lot of people in independent filmmaking get caught up in this and thinking, that they need to sort of be experts in whatever role they have. The trick to everything is having a strong team. I can't do anything of what I do without my team, and my team changes from time to time. Right now, I'm in Vancouver. I'm getting ready to do this show. And so I've had to hire a completely new team because of the restrictions of US versus Canada. I have to hire locals up here. And so I've interviewed and I've assembled a really great team. You go through it very carefully. My team in LA is terrific. I've got an excellent gaffer. I've got an excellent key grip. I've got an excellent key focus puller, excellent camera operators, people who I really vibe with, people who I collaborate with. And I really can't do what I do without them, because your team is vital to you being able to do what you do. I will say to my gaffer, there are times when I've gotten into a scene and I'll go, I don't really know how we're going to light this. I'll look around, I'll see what the parameters are. I know we can't rig any lights up here and there, and we're facing the wrong direction for the sun outside. And I want this to look like, 8:00 Sunday morning, over coffee. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what I'll say to them. I'll say, look, make this look like 8:00 Sunday morning coffee. And then they know what to do. They know which lights to come in, which diffusion, which color. And then we'll all work together. And I'll say, okay, yeah, it's like making sauce or painting a picture. It's like, yeah, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Okay, now take this out, lose that, turn that off. Okay, yeah, now bounce this in here. Perfect, beautiful, walk away. This is what we need to do. And it's this collaboration. So I think that, even the great ones like I mean, Roger Deakins is the greatest. I think all DPs will, agree that he's the top end.
That shot, Rick, in 1917, where the protag is running down because he's got to deliver a message, and he's running down the battlefield, and then he jumps into a trench.
It's incredible.
And then the fact that he didn't do that with, well, at least he said he didn't do that with any robotic arms.
Right.
It was all shot. And I guess what they did is they put him on a track, and they rolled the track, and then had the actor run behind the camera. And then the track went into the trench. I don't know. It's bananas.
He is bananas. He is the absolute master, and we all aspire to do great work like Roger. I mean, I had the fortune of meeting him at the ASC Awards, and I have a picture of him printed, and it's on the wall in my office because it was such an inspirational moment meeting him. But I think, I don't know this, so I'm not quoting him, but I would guess that even he would agree that, you're as good as your team. You surround yourself with experts who, they may not be 100% perfect at what they do, but they're going to work to make you better, and they're going to work to make the show better. Larry Pierce is an old, long since retired. I don't even know if Larry's still around. Rest his soul if he isn't. But Larry he directed the old Batman and Robin series and Green Hornet. I worked with him in the early days of Touched by an Angel. And he would say things like, "Oh, you never don't tell the dolly grip how to lay the track. You don't tell the prop person how to make the prop. You don't tell the boom man how to hold the boom. You let these people do their jobs. You're the director. You're dealing with the actors. You're dealing with the writers, and it's right. You got to listen, and you got to let people do their best work. And if you surround yourself with a strong team, they're going to do that. And not everyone in the chain is good. There's going to be a weak link here and there, but then you help that person. Yeah. You don't sabotage that person. If you end up bagging on that person who's the weak link in the chain, you're in trouble. Because then all the other parts are going to start falling apart. You all have to work together. And like, okay, look, we got a weak area over here. Let's all work together to lift this person up. What can we do to help them?
Yeah.
Because you can always learn. No one's ever an expert. You're never an expert, except maybe if you're Roger Deakins.
Yeah. In the spirit of that, in the spirit of learning, with so many up and coming filmmakers and DPs listening to this conversation, what would be your setup for a perfect bar scene? from a lighting and sort of feel situation. And the reason I ask that is because a lot of industries have continuing education classes you can take. In film, to me, as an EP and as a producer, my continuing ed is I'll get on my knees and beg directors and producers to let me just sit on set as a fly on the wall. And I'll go in and I'll watch how the editor's doing his dailies, and I'll watch what the director's doing. I'll see how the scriptie's working. I'll just try to write notes on everything I'm seeing. But the telltale thing for me, especially if there's a bar scene in the film, is I love to see how they light a bar and how they set that scene up and see if it rings true to me. Like, okay, I've been in 1,000 bars. Does any bar I've ever walked into look like that? When I look through the viewfinder. And sometimes the answer is no. I've never seen a bar, that looks like that is lit like that. So why did the DP light it that way? And so I was curious what your thought is on what your perfect sort of, if you had to visualize it or speak it out from your mind, what would it look like?
This is such a great question and such a great setup, because I've experienced this in so many different ways, independent and then network television, and I'm now in the midst of helping, plan and design another bar on another TV show, which is totally different from the last two bars on the last two shows that I did. Brooklyn Nine-Nine had Shaw's Bar, and it was a big bar with lots of neon, lots of colored Christmas lights, and it was very colorful. And we had lots of par, 38s, that were highlighting the perimeter, and jukebox and, can lights. And it always felt very cozy and homey, but it was never hazy or smoky or anything like that. I was laughing when you were asking this, because one time we had it that bar was always pre-lit, but then we would always tweak it based on how the director staged the actors. And so then we would light what the blocking would be. And one time my key grip said to me, "This looks like Bennigan's. This is supposed to look like Bennigan's." No, we went too far. Turn off half the lights. We don't want Bennigan's, and then Grand Crew is entirely different. And I'll get into that. Here's the thing. We've already talked about having your strong team. The second thing that I always say to people, I say this to directors, I say this to new filmmakers, is what is the movie that you see in your head? Let's start there. And I always liken that back to my comic books that I made when I was in 6th grade. What am I seeing when I'm playing it, when I'm reading the script? When am I seeing a close-up? When am I seeing a wide shot? Am I seeing a move? Is there something? Is there a steady cam? Is there a crane? Like what is there? Is it just static? Is it dead on symmetrical? Am I coming up off of a bar glass, the drink into the character as they're taking the drink? Is that getting me into the scene? Is it a waiter bringing a tray by with drinks and setting it down? What am I seeing in my head? I start there. And I also ask the director, what do you see? And so what I would say to a new filmmaker is they're lighting a bar, like, how do you see this? Is it something like, I just watched this great film that George Clooney did called The Tender Bar.
Oh yeah. It's on my list of movies to watch.
It's fantastic. I loved it. They nailed it. And their bar was a set, but it's got such a great vibe for the 70s. It just looks and feels like a bar in the 70s. And a lot of it comes down to production design. Mm-hmm. You can walk into a bar, whether it's a practical bar on location or a set, and depending on how it's decorated will help inform me as a cinematographer how I'm going to light it. So for example, on Grand Crew, the vibe of the bar is supposed to be, hip and cool and not very bright. We don't need it to be, like a Bennigan's per se. And the real bar that's in Los Angeles is a lot darker than how I light it on the show. My bar is on the set. When they did the pilot, it was a different cinematographer for the pilot, and they shot it on location. And it's a much darker bar. They also didn't have the resources to hang lights from a grid like I do in a studio. So the production designer put a lot of cool like artwork on the walls and distressed brick and glasses behind the bar. And so I will look at that and I'll go, okay, cool. So he's got real dark tones here with furniture. I think our tabletops are black and our chairs are black. The floor is like a dark concrete. The brick is distressed and dark. And he's got these cool pieces of art. So I then look at that and go, okay, I see some lavender. I see some magenta. Okay, I see some sodium vapor coming in from the street lamp. And then I'll talk to the gaffer and say, okay, what can we do to motivate this? Let's put something where every time it's nighttime, this jazz poster that's already got some deep purples and reds in it inherently, let's help that out. Let's augment it with a little tweeny and put some, let's try some half, CTB, or let's put some lavender party gel in there. Let's really make that pop, And so I will take my lead from the production design. On Grand Crew, we have hanging pendants. So does your bar have pendants? Maybe the source of everything comes from there.
Right.
On Brooklyn, we didn't have pendants. They were just can lights up above the bar where they sat. So everything from Brooklyn came from like when they were sitting at the bar, the motivated light source came from like the bar behind them or from the shelves in front of them, but it never was like hanging lights above them. Whereas on Grand Crew, it's above them. So you feel that, right? When you are staging your actors, you want to make it feel motivated, add to it what you need to add to it without it looking lit. That's the trick. That's the key on any show, is trying to make it look natural. And so, that's sort of where I start. That's what I do. Now, when you're an independent filmmaker, you don't have all these resources that I'm talking about in network television. You just simply don't have that budget.
Right.
So what do you have that can work? Okay, well, we're shooting on a bar on location. It's got a lot of neons. Okay, cool. Great. Oh, but they're flickering in camera. Okay, but can you change your shutter angle? Maybe if you tweak the shutter angle in your camera, you can get rid of those flickers because you don't have flicker-free ballasts. Okay, great. That solves that. Okay, terrific. Hey, it's the color temperature in this camera makes this light look really a putrid green, but it actually feels good for the story. Great. Embrace that. Lean into it. Okay, what else can you do? Do you have anything in your disposal, like a long LED, bar or strip that you can put that helps, bring some uplighting from behind the bar, maybe on the bartender. Or if you've got can lights, can you diffuse them and make that softer? Use your resources to the best of your ability, and that will inform a look that on your best day, it could have taken you months to come up with. Haze is always good. It helps lessen the contrast. On this bar that I'm doing now, we're going to use haze because the one that we're doing on this show is in a strip mall. In the story, it's in a strip mall. So it's an older bar and it doesn't have a lot of, money into it. So it's going to have old, crackled, the bar itself is going to have like the bumper on it is like foam leather. So it's going to be distressed and ripped and torn and cracked and, dark tones on the bar and a couple of neons that maybe don't work and flicker. And, and so it's and we're going to use haze and it's going to look great. It's going to look like what it should look like. So embrace the story. Look and see what's inside of your head, and then use your resources to try and help create that look. You don't want to overlay. The biggest mistake I see all filmmakers, and we've all been there. I include myself in this. All new cinematographers go into it, and you end up overlighting because you think you have to light everything. Yeah. The trick is less is more. It really is. Less is more. And also, you don't want to be too dialed in. You want to give the director and the actors the freedom to change the blocking and adjust if they need to and be flexible that way. If you're too dialed in with the lighting, now no one can move and everyone's just static and that ends up being troublesome. And when I've directed, I play that role, and put that hat on and tell the DP the same thing. Like, give me something that's a broad sense in here so that I'm not too tied in.
Yeah. And it also gives your editor more to play with.
100%.
Versus having something that's really skinny, like, oh, I only got, 1 or 2 takes or 3 takes of the same kind of shot kind of thing. I love haze in a 2-shot in a bar, by the way, where it's just 2 people talking. There's just that brings some romance to it. Yeah.
Long lens. We do a lot of that on Grand Crew. That became the look in that show was really getting far back with our lenses. I used to shoot 3 cameras on that show. Mm-hmm. So 2 cameras would be the coverage and 1 would be sort of a master. And I would always try to get way back as far as I could. And it breaks, it really centers focus on the actors. It gives everything else a really nice soft quality, a rom-com kind of feel, which is what we were going for with Grand Crew. Mm-hmm. And that haze really helps, and the twinkle lights and those things that really pops. Before you know it, you've got a lot of different looks going on in a bar that you didn't see with your own eyes because you weren't looking at it through a long lens.
Well, it's such great advice and really appreciate you sharing that. And even the piece about production design, it's sometimes the marker between, an indie film that doesn't quite hit the mark and an indie film that's really great. And you can see promises. Just can the audience suspend disbelief based on what they're seeing before any dialogue happens? Like, do I even believe I'm here? Because your production design didn't meet the level of suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's key. You want to make sure that collaboration, whether you're directing or producing, an independent film or a short, don't cut the corners on the production design, as much as you can, and those people are worth their weight in gold. I work with one in Cleveland. I've directed a couple of shorts out there now. And there's a production designer there, and she's just absolutely amazing because she has like a shoestring budget on these projects that we have, but man, does she stretch those dollars. Mm-hmm. She's got incredible resources and impeccable taste, and she knows exactly what, to bring to the table to help augment the story. And not everything makes it onto the set or into the film, but most of it does because, she's resourceful. And in independent filmmaking, you really need to be resourceful. You don't have the budget like what we would have on a network show. Half the time on a network show, we don't have what we need, to really run the gamut on things, Right. And so you just have to be resourceful, and use what you have.
Absolutely. We have a production designer down here that's like that. Her name is Cicely Hoffman. So if you're ever in Nashville shooting a short or a film or anything, and you need somebody who knows how to be that creative person who can create 3 outfits that look unique. I've seen her do this where she's created like 3 or 4 different outfits from one outfit. Or when she was our production designer on our feature film, Another Version of You, we shot everything in the same apartment because we had to, but she made that apartment look like 4 different places. And I've never heard anybody that watched that say, oh, it's the same place. No, they all thought it was a unique place.
And to your point, you're suspending, we're storytellers. So you're suspending the audience's, disbelief into thinking, okay, yeah, I'm here, I'm there. This is not some set, or this isn't, they didn't have any money. And that's the key. If it detracts, it's a problem. Take the note. If somebody comes up to you at the monitor and go, that looks weird. Like, what is that thing? Like, well, that's a really cool prop that we want to have because it was somebody's dad gave him his camera and he wanted to put it in the background. Yeah, well, it's distracting. Well, then get it out of there. Yeah. Take the note. If the light is too bright, if the flare isn't good, because you just don't ever want to distract your audience. You want to tell the story and have the focus be on the story and not on something in a frame that isn't working.
Beautiful. You did mention Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's kind of the elephant in the room. We have to talk about it, right? And it's kind of a big show, and you're doing big things on it, and it's back, and it got canceled.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Right?
Go ahead.
And God, that's got to be so devastating, right? I think about that happening to Family Guy. I thought about that happening to Ray Donovan recently. What are executives getting wrong when they cancel a show that has a rabid fan base, and it becomes obvious that it has a rabid fan base after the cancellation?
What I've always told people is, there's 2 words to the term film business: film and business. And what we often like to say on set is, well, we're pleasing the people up in the ivory tower. There are executives that sit in big rooms and make millions of dollars in decisions every single day. And it's based on algorithms. It's based on demographics. It's based on so many things that I don't even care to know what they are, because I would rather just, be the guy behind the camera. I think that you do see that happen. Men of a Certain Age was an amazing show that got canned, I think, after 2 seasons. There are lots of shows that they get canceled and you go, what? Why? Why not give it another chance? And you just never know. It could have been personality conflict. It could have been just the network wants to go in another direction. In our case with Brooklyn, I wasn't privy to the decisions that Fox made to drop it. I just know how it felt being one of the guys on the inside, and it was devastating. It was how could they end us after 5 seasons without even, this was a great little show with a great little cast of characters and great story arcs, and now we don't even get to end it.
Yeah.
It seems like more and more now television keeps changing every decade. And there are great documentaries about this. And in today's world, a lot of the models allow a start and a finish, because a lot of shows don't go more than, some will go 1 series. Gervais did Afterlife. He did 3 series of it, but usually he does 2 series to every one of his shows. And so it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it is told in a proper, narrative format, which all writers and storytellers want to do. Nobody wants to have a show yanked out from under them like that. Right. And so we were devastated when it happened, and everyone calling one another, but also not just because we couldn't finish the show for the fans, but because we didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to one another. Here we had all gotten to know one another. You're talking about 29 departments and 170 people, over 5 years, 9 months out of the year. That's a long time to spend with people. That's more time than I had spent in college, and now all of a sudden that's gone. You're going, what happened? Who made the wrong decision and why? Well, I think what the fan base did for us is that, we had that huge outpouring on Twitter and social media we didn't even realize we had that many fans. I mean, we knew that we were in over, we were in over 200 countries throughout the world, but so we knew we had a reach, but we didn't know it was that big. And it blew us away. You know, I was texting, you know, with cast members and crew members during that whole 36-hour period. And we were blown away. And a lot of those fans were DMing us, you know, what do we do? What about this? What about that? And I didn't know. There were only a few people who knew that anything was even remotely possible with NBC, but the majority of us didn't know that. And I was like, all I could say to people is just keep doing what you're doing. You know, I keep letting the world know that you love the show so much. And we were just so lucky. I had actually shut my phone off. I had it. And once we found out that Hulu had passed, I was like, that's it. I'd shut down my computer. I turned off my phone. I turned to my wife and said, that's it. We're done. We got to find another show. And the next morning, Joel McKinnon Miller, who is a dear friend of mine who played Scully, he's calling my wife's phone. And she says, why is Joel calling my phone? I said, oh no, I think I worried him because I texted him last night and said, that's it. I'm done. And I think I sent the wrong message because I turned off my phone. So I called him and he goes, we got picked up. Turn on your phone. We got picked up by NBC. It was such a great celebration, you know, and they allowed us to end it properly, you know, the way the showrunners, you know, wanted to end it. I mean, and they called the ball on that. And they said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to take it through season 8. This is how we're going to end the story. And it was great. I think that's very satisfying. And I think that, you know, I don't know, you sort of owe that. I feel like you owe that to the audience. If you're depending on the audience to watch your show in the first place, to boost your ratings and your social media, to keep you on the air, then I feel like you owe them as the storyteller to finish it properly.
Yeah, we saw that with Ray Donovan. They ended up sort of meeting somewhere in the middle and just doing a feature film instead of an additional season. And, you know, a lot of people were like, well, wouldn't a film cost more money than a 10 episode season on HBO? No, it wouldn't.
No.
And so those are, you know, probably $1 million to 10 an episode on Ray Donovan, but
Ray Donovan. Yeah.
But the audience was satisfied, to your point, Rick. And this is where the power of Twitter is good. I'm often afraid of the power of Twitter, maybe somewhere in the background of my mind, especially like I saw recently where Jimmy Kimmel made the kind of joke a stand-up comedian makes. Definitely not racist. Definitely not. It was just a joke in my mind. But those K-pop fans are insane. I mean, they went after him and the scary thing is that maybe every 15th comment was, let's get him off the air. Let's do whatever we can to make sure he loses his show. And I'm like, that's where we take it too far. Because on one hand, we can be fans and say, let's make sure this gets back on the air. And then, but if you accept that, then you also have to accept its polar opposite, which is let's do whatever we can to make sure Rick Page never works again, kind of thing. It's like, whoa.
No, don't say that.
I have a wife, I have a family, I have responsibilities. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Yeah. And it can be a little intense.
Make sure that that's not the soundbite promoting the podcast. Let's make sure Rick Page never works again.
Let's do a new soundbite. Let's make sure Rick Page gets every job that needs a cinematographer in Hollywood. That's the new soundbite we'll
I like that.
Promote with.
I like that. Let's roll with that.
Speaking of Hollywood, speaking of the business, in film, we always say, show up and work hard. That's the way to do it. Show up, work hard. But in every other industry, they say, show up and work smart. Don't work harder, work smarter. Why don't filmmakers seem to embrace the work smarter, not harder attitude?
Well, I think it depends on who you're working with. I mean, I've certainly worked with plenty of filmmakers who do the work smarter attitude. You know, unfortunately, you still see, you know, some of these absolutely tragic, devastating, you know, safety things and unsafe practices happening, which is absolutely, you know, abhorrent. You know, I think it depends on who you're working with, frankly. And I think that also goes back to what I was saying about, build a strong team around you. I mean, you want to have, this is something that George Greiner taught me at the very beginning. You want to have attitude is everything. That is key. And if you have a good attitude and you are surrounding yourself with others who are like-minded with that good attitude, you're off to a great start. If you have great attitudes, usually you're going to have people who are saying, okay, yeah, let's be safe about this. Let's, like my key grip is he's an amazing key grip, Jack Nagel. And he's got my back at every turn. And for that matter, everyone on the crew's back at every turn. Mm-hmm. The key grip is one of their head responsibilities is to ensure that there's safety on set. Now, in the pandemic days, now that we're shooting, we were all off for a while, and then we learned how to come back. There's a health and safety officer on set, COVID manager. They're dealing with keeping all of us safe with PPE and testing and making sure that nobody gets COVID. But, at the beginning, when we first came back, it's like, that's all the focus and concentration was, and if anything would start to go awry, Jack would pull me aside and the producer aside and say, this is unsafe. We need to stop right now. We need to fix this. And then, there would be an announcement. Like, it's not just, and the producer would step up and say, guys, this isn't just about COVID. We still have to be safe with everything else too.
Right.
We have to be smart about it. I think that people get working hard confused with working fast, and that's where people get into trouble. Look, we're not launching the rocket. We're not doing brain surgery here. So sure, there's a budget to be made and we need to make our day, but if you're going to compromise safety, or if you're going to compromise, anything, for the sake of just going fast to get the shot, forget it. You don't need the shot, or get the shot tomorrow. Right. You absolutely, we're in the business of making entertainment, and that's where the intelligence factor needs to come in. So I think oftentimes people think, well, I just have to work faster, I'm going to lose my job. Okay, well, look, I came up in cinematography, and I started out in the very beginning as a camera intern. I worked my way all the way up in every position, and I was a diligent camera assistant. I worked really hard and really fast, to try and please whoever was up above me. But you have to be smart about it, because when you're not smart about it, accidents happen. And mm-hmm. whether it's slicing your finger or, God forbid, anything else that has gone on that we're all aware of, it's not necessary. It's just not necessary. So I don't know. The people who, I guess, to sum that up, the people who don't embrace the work smart, I tend to not gravitate to those people. Yeah. If I'm a DP on a show and I find out that the first AD, who I'm working very closely with to run the set, or the UPM, or any of those of us who are in the top supervisory positions, if any of those people aren't being smart, I tend to just say, I think I got to pass on this one, guys. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. I mean, be smart, so that you can come back tomorrow, and no one is hurt, no one ever needs to get hurt ever.
Very, very well put. A couple of technical questions for those listening that want to, let's say, go get a kit. Just go start shooting, right? They don't have the budget of a network TV, so they're not going to be shooting RE, or they're not going to be shooting Red per se. Maybe, but because I don't want to steal that from you.
Right.
What do you shoot with? What are your favorite brands, software, resources?
Well, I'll tell you what. I have been working with an amazingly talented filmmaker by the name of Rick Gomez. He's a dear friend of mine, and he and Kobe Tolan and Steve Zahn and I formed a company, and we've done. Frank John Hughes is involved in that as well. We've done like a bunch of independent projects together.
What's the name of the company?
Macaroni Art Productions. They're the ones that produced this Uncandid Portrait.
Okay.
And we have been pooling our resources together on all of these projects, and we've been shooting them between, I think, 10 and 20,000 a piece, which isn't a lot of money. I mean, that's hardly any money at all. But we're doing it for the love of art and because we all love one another and love working together. Mm-hmm. We've been shooting on DSLRs. We have been shooting with, I think we did this music video, I think this was a while ago, but we used the Canon Mark II, and shot on that. And I think we did another job with a Nikon and we hooked up the Gemini and we were able to shoot 4K with it. Nowadays, they're coming out with great, DSLRs and other cameras that have these bigger sensors. You can shoot 4K. So, the compression may be more than what it would be on, say, a professional camera, but you can get some really great imagery on fairly inexpensive, cameras. Blackmagic is putting out cameras that are like $4,000, mm-hmm. that are amazing. And to me, that's fine. Where I always, as a professional, and when I say that, I mean, as a professional who wants to get the absolute, I want to get the best for whatever the project is. Even if there's no money on the project, I'm still wanting to get the very best that I can. For me, it's all about the glass. The mm-hmm. camera is one thing and the sensor is one thing along with the software that's in the camera. But if you've got really crappy lenses, then, I don't know, maybe that's the look you want for the show then too. And it works, but I'm always going for better glass as much as I can. But I find that, there's, Canon has a really good line and Fujifilm has a great line out there right now.
Fuji. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of consumer cameras out there that are working really well so that, look, you have no reason now if you're a new filmmaker to not be making films. When I was coming up, and I was in high school and I was using a VHS camcorder, I had to borrow this thing and figure out all this stuff. You can use your iPhone and go out and shoot something tonight, cut it together on your phone, post it on YouTube or on your Insta story, and you got people looking at it. That's incredible. Incredible. The resources that we have today. So, honestly, you could, and people have done it. They have been shooting shorts and films with their iPhone. There's software that you can get for your iPhone so that you can get better quality recording with different bells and whistles and parameters to adjust settings, aperture and color temperature and everything.
Yep.
And you can shoot with that. Filmic Pro. That's it. It's great. There's no reason to not do that. You absolutely should be out there creating,
There's a movie called The Comeback. It's on YouTube right now. It was shot for Apple. Their whole shot on iPhone series. You just won't believe this thing was shot only by phones alone. It's just such a masterful work for a short film.
And here's the thing. You don't need the most expensive camera or the most expensive lens, to make your movie. You need what's going on up here and what's going on around you. You can, if the story is good enough, you can shoot this thing on toilet paper. You just need to get out there. You just need to get out there and create, because that's the value. Go to any film festival or watch any film festival online and you can watch hundreds of shorts out there that will make you cry because they're so good. And you'd be amazed that they had no money and what they shot them on, because that is what the equipment you use isn't what's going to win you an award. It's your creativity and your motivation and your inspiration that is going to win you that award, and get you known and get you recognized.
It's a wonderful point. Yeah. Golly, just go out there and make it happen. And I think the resources are out there, but you need to be resourceful. So for the audience, Rick was, when he said, you got to start with this, he was pointing, for those who aren't watching on YouTube, he was pointing at his head. So start with your brain. Oh. And then this is a really far callback from the conversation earlier. For those that are uninitiated, Bennigan's is used to be a national chain of restaurants that no longer exists. And
it's kind of like a Chili's or what would it be like today? I don't know. It'd
kind of be like a
fun family,
or like a
fun family place that's super well brightly lit with lots of fun neon, and it's just way too much.
It felt like it was slightly above. If you wanted to class it up a little bit, it was slightly above Bonanza and Ponderosa. So you go to those two,
exactly.
then no, we're not going to Bonanza tonight. We're going to Bennigan's.
Exactly.
It was like a step up, in the right direction.
I will say this, just to add one more little bit there about the camera stuff, is one thing that better cameras will get you is it will help you save time. Here's the thing.
Oh, okay.
I liken filmmaking to a triangle. There's 3 points. You need time, money, and experience. And if you've got enough elements in all 3 of those points, you're going to be okay. If you cut corners too much or you lose any of those 3 things, you're in trouble. You can have all the time in the world and all the money in the world, but if you don't have anyone on the crew who has any experience, you're going to have a really hard time making your movie. You can have all kinds of experience and all kinds of time, but if you have no money, you can have a really hard time making your movie. So on and so forth. You get the idea. So if you've got bottom of the barrel equipment, you're going to end up having a harder time making your days with whatever your schedule is. And I think that if you can afford good equipment, you should try to put that money into it and not skimp on that, because that will save you. Not only are you going to get better image quality, but it's going to save you time at the end of your day. It really is. I mean, and time is everything, especially on an independent production, because you have nothing to make up for it. You don't have the time and the resources to do any reshoots or anything like that. So I would say
weigh it. Right?
Yeah. Try not to skimp, whenever possible. Know where to cut corners, and know where not to. That's a very hard lesson to learn. And a lot of people think, camera gear is so expensive, or the lighting package, or the props, it's like, okay, well, where did they get the props from? Maybe that's something where you can cut corners on a little bit and still get really interesting props. Or maybe we got to make a bunch of our own props, instead of buying them from some warehouse, we're going to make these, and that actually is going to make the film better because we've made them,
Yeah.
But, hard to shoot the movie without a camera or a lens, hard to light the shot if you don't have anything, so
right.
Just a little word to the wise there.
Well, I love it, because the money savings might be on the time you save instead of on the actual
100%.
Equipment. You are a member of both IATSE and the DGA. Have you found anything that one guild could learn from the other?
Anything that one guild could learn from the other? Not really. Not that I mean, both are very different. I mean, one is a technical union. The other one is IATSE covers all the unions and all the locals, but specifically the International Cinematographers Guild covers DPs, operators, and all the different assistants, and the DITs. The DGA just covers, production managers, directors, assistant directors. So their focus is, they have a much more focused guild than I'd say what IATSE is. I mean, both have their pluses, both have their foibles and things that they're trying to deal with every year. Yeah, I don't think I have a great answer for that question.
Is there anything anyone should know to navigate? Those
I will say this.
Went into them.
Yeah, I will say this. I mean, it's important to get into either or both. If you can. I mean, I was fortunate in that I always wanted to get into the DGA because I want to be able to direct, and the circles that I'm traveling in is everything's DGA. So it makes it's one step closer to making it easier for a company to hire me if as opposed to me being non-guild, because it's just a lot of extra paperwork and this, that, and the other. And I got into the guild based off of a job that I was on, where I was the A camera operator on an independent film. We were down in Alabama, and the DP had to leave early, so I finished the show, and then I had to do a bunch of title sequence, second unit stuff. And when the title sequence, second unit stuff was coming up, the director had to leave the show. So the producer came to me and said, he had known me for a long time. He said, "I've seen your shorts. I know you know what you're doing. I'm going to get you a contract, and you're going to," because this was a DGA film. He's like, "I'm going to get you into the DGA." And so that was how I got my card. And then I had to go through, meeting, different directors to sign off. And it was great, because then I got to direct this whole second unit. And it got me, one step closer. Now, the trick is, though, particularly for those of you listening who are independent filmmakers, is once you join a guild, now everything you direct has to be guild. So there are ways around that. You can get experimental DGA contracts. That's how I do it. When I go to Cleveland and do these shorts, they're DGA films, but I go through an experimental, the DGA has a division where you can get a low budget contract to make the film DGA signatory so that you can direct, because you can no longer direct anything without it being, run through the guild. So that's all. You just have to think about that. If you're living in, say, a city like New York and you're just doing constant indies back to back, maybe the DGA isn't for you yet. What's wonderful about the DGA is, the membership has a tremendous amount of benefits, health and welfare, pension, that sort of thing. Similarly, in the guild, in the IATSE, in the ICG Local 600, that's where I get all my health benefits from. And so not only do I get health benefits from them, but I get protection. It is vitally crucial, I think, to try and get yourself into a position where you're working on union films. Here's why. I spent the first half of my career doing non-union. When you're working non-union, and I say this now, especially because we've had these accidents happening, this tragedy last year with the DP getting killed, and it, don't make no mistake, accidents happen on union sets too. That was a union set. My point is, I did my first half of my career working non-union. When you're working non-union, there are no rules. The rules are whatever the production company says they are. Right. So you don't have turnaround rules, and protections. So you could wrap one night at 1 a.m. and your call could be at 7 a.m. the next morning, right. Without Friday a 10-hour or 11-hour, guarantee. Well, not even Friday, midweek, and then you've got to come back in without having adequate sleep or distance, driving distance protection, or meal penalties, and you go so long without meals. I mean, there are so many things that the union protects you from, and let's face it, everyone who's doing a union show, the producers, are they have their job. The union will protect them, make sure that they're doing it in accordance with all the laws. On a non-union show, you just don't have that protection. Not only that, you have to negotiate your own rate. For years as an AC, I had to negotiate my own deal. Whereas in a guild, there's a rate card depending on the type of production you're working, and that's what's going to stipulate how much money you make. And then those hours are going to count towards you. Every hour you work on a show goes into a bank of health and welfare so that you have your health insurance. So I would strongly urge you to, if you're coming up as a cinematographer in the camera department, get your experience. But if you can get into track your hours and get on a union shoot, do it and get into the guild. Now, there again, you can work independent productions that are non-union at your own risk. But if the union finds out and they try to turn the show, you can't cross that line. That's when you have to step. So you can do that. It's not encouraged. And, again, I don't know. I got a bad taste in my mouth from the non-union stuff because I worked so much of it. And there were so many times when I know things weren't safe. And, I was lucky to be safe because I had a, brain on top of my shoulders. But, I don't know. It can be dicey. You have to be very careful.
Very, very
this is a marathon. This business is a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to. I've been doing this 30 years. You really need to look out for yourself.
Yeah, you need to make sure you're around to do the job. For sure.
That's right.
You have a friend whose brother was, working crew and just I think he had a terrible accident where he was killed, and no one suspected that what he was working on was unsafe. And man, it turned out to be just absolutely life changing. We are going to enter a little bit of a speed round of questions.
Nice, great.
And I'll start with: what are the two best pieces of advice you've received so far in your career, and who did they come from?
The first bit is attitude is everything. That came from George Greiner, the DP that I referenced earlier in the conversation. And he's right. you have a good attitude, people want to be around you. You know, you don't want to be the person complaining. You know, you get to do what you're doing. You don't have to do what you're doing, you know, and it's a privilege to be there. So your attitude is everything. You're going to get a better product out of yourself and around the people and with the people around you if you have a good attitude, you know, and that came from George. The second one, you know, I was doing a short film. I had met Ossie Davis when I was a film student, and then I got to work with him as a camera assistant on a show after I had been in the business. So I'd gotten to know him over the last few years, and I was getting ready to do this short film, and he offered to act in it for us. And I couldn't believe it. My friends and I got together, and we pooled our resources, and we flew him out, and we had a day with him. And before we rolled the first shot, I said to him, I said, Ossie, not for nothing, but why are you helping me? I don't understand. You've been doing this. You're like 80 years old. Like, you're Ossie Davis, you know, like, why would you do something like this? And he said to me very gently, he said, young man, he said, there are those many people who helped me when I was coming up, and they're long gone. And he said, this is how you give back. He said, you help those who are coming along, and you look out for them, you train, you teach, you help people be, you know, rise to the best of their ability. Because the people who helped you aren't going to be there. That's how you pay them back. That's how you say thank you. And I have never forgotten that. And I do that every single chance I get, at every opportunity. And I look above and say, all right, Ossie, there you go. There's another one. Add it to the list, you know, because that to me is invaluable, you know.
Boom.
So I would say those two.
What are the biggest creative and business mistakes you see newcomers making today?
I think the biggest creative and business mistakes that I've seen have been people putting on airs. You know, just be yourself. You know, my wife, you know, God bless her, she says, just be you. And she's right. Yeah. You know, humility goes a lot further in this business, you know, and it goes a lot further with collaboration than pretending you know it all. Because when I see this happening, it can become very costly. People who don't listen or take direction, you know, they can run a production into a direction where you end up losing time and wasting money. You know, you need to be yourself. If you don't know something, turn to someone and say, look, I don't know what you're talking about. I need help with this, or I'm fumbling with this, and this isn't working out, you know? So, you know, it can be so costly, whether we're talking about dropping a lens, you know, and costing the production all kinds of money with L&D, or you're talking about putting someone in the wrong wardrobe, or you're talking about screwing up the directions, or you're talking about plugging in, you know, the wrong amperage and causing a fire. I mean, who knows? You know, yeah. You just don't ever want to put on airs. No one expects you to be perfect at everything, and if they do, to hell with them, because we're all learning. I'm learning every single day, you know, and I've been at this a long time. So that, I think, is the biggest thing. I mean, here's the thing. You want to express your ideas, and you want to express them with confidence, but you don't want to shut down when they're rejected. You know, this is a very difficult business, and it's niche, you know, it's niche. It's niche.
I like niche.
Niche. It's niche. It's very niche. It's very French. You know, you have to find your place to fit in. You know, at the end of the day, people like to have you around because of your ideas, and there is no right or wrong. You know, it's just your idea, you know, and they're either going to accept your idea or they're not going to accept your idea. And if they don't, who cares? You're going to have another idea after that. Right. And you can't let that stop you just because someone didn't like your idea. The trick is, you know, be yourself. You know, don't put on airs. Don't be who you think you are. You know, don't act like you've already been doing this forever. And I am a big Hollywood director of photography. I am a big director. Nobody gives a shit. You know, we're all here to make a movie together. So that's be right. You, because I'm going to respect you 100 times more for things that you don't know versus the things that you do know. Honestly.
Let's walk into this scenario, Rick. Just follow me here, because you are a guy who loves to pay it forward. Let's say a young aspiring DP just did the mistake you just described. They told some client that they are a brilliant director of photography and they can definitely do the project that the client is looking to be done. That was a complete lie. they've come to you, Rick, and said, I have 1 month to learn how to be a DP, what are the first 3 things you teach them?
Wow, that's tough. Because now you really sold yourself up the river. I would say, first off, get yourself a gaffer and a key grip who are way better than you, and check your ego at that door. Get a left eye and a right eye, because they're going to save your butt. They let them light it. Let them light it. Because they always have good ideas. If they're worth their weight in salt, which most of them are, they always have good ideas because they've worked for a lot of different DPs. If they're experienced, they've worked for a lot of different DPs. You put 100 of us in a room, we're going to do it 100 different ways, and they're all going to be right. And these gaffers and DP and gaffers and key grips, they know this. They've been working with these people. So hire yourself a strong team that way. That's the first thing I would say. Secondly, I would say less is more. Be simple. Don't go crazy. You don't need to do too much. You need to sell the client what the client needs and try to think of it in simplistic ways, simple lighting, simple camera moves. And if they are asking you for something big, like, well, can we do all this green screen stuff? Let me get back to you on that. Now go find yourself somebody who knows VisFX, and they're going to be able to help you figure that out. Like, okay, yeah, you have somebody who's going to like this. Well, here's what you need. We're going to give you a screen, or we're going to give you this, that, or the other. And then, this is what you're going to need to do so that we can pull it into post and edit it. This is what you're going to need, for the background of it. Find an expert who knows green screen. Don't pretend you know how to do it. Again, it's like what I was saying before. If you put on airs that you don't know, and now you've done this to get this job, your biggest strength is going to be in those who you hire around you. And then I would say the last thing is listen to the client. They're the ones paying the bill. So it's not your movie. You can't dig your heels in and take this as your big moment. This is your commercial. Say it's a commercial. This is going to be the thing that's going to get me my next job, and I'm going to direct the hell out of this thing. I'm going to be Spielberg, and I'm going to shoot the hell out of this thing and be Janusz, and this is going to be amazing. No, wrong. It's their movie. They're paying the bills. Listen to them, what they want. Check with them. Always communicate. Is this kind of what you guys are thinking? Do you like this? Do you want to be tighter? Do you want to be looser? This is a little bit different from what we talked about when we were setting up all the storyboards and pre-production. And I'm a little bit backed into a corner here because of the time of day, and we've got this big window that we're fighting. If I offer you this option, would this work for you? Be a team member to them and listen to them. If they say yes or no, go with that. Don't fight too hard. You got to pick your battles.
Love it. And for those listening at home, number 1 is find an experienced gaffer and key grip. Number 2 is less is more. And number 3, listen to the client, be a team member, communicate. That's beautiful. And Rick, this conversation has been beautiful. I've learned so much, not to mention the Rick Page triangle for ultimate filmmaking success: time, experience, money. And please feel free to trademark that, because I think that's pretty valuable on its own. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, the internet, maybe even see some of your work.
Well, you can find me. I am on both Twitter and Instagram, though I don't tweet as much. I kind of use that more for just reading. I really like to do behind the scenes on Instagram. You can find me there at rickpage_, RICKPAGE_. Lots of great BTS content on there. And that's sort of my jam. I really enjoy, putting our shows out there and connecting with people that way. Online, my website is Rick Page DP. Same spelling, RICPA. All right, I can't even spell my own name. My website is rickpagedp.com, RICKPAGEDP.com. And I've got my reels on there. I'm repped by Zero Gravity Management and Alex Franklin. And you can see my work on there, my projects. I'm in the middle of helping Rick Gomez and our guys with Macaroni Art Productions. We're getting ready to do a feature called Hot Fruit, with Steve and Judy Greer and Ann Dowd. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's over at Macaroni Art Productions and .com. And yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at.
I can't wait to see that. I love that entire cast. And I thought I'd end on this. It's just, it comes through in your voice and your personality, even through your eyes, just your gratitude for getting to do what you do every day. And I was curious, if you don't mind me asking, I know you had a pretty big health scare, heart surgery. How did that change your outlook on your career and your life?
Chris, how do you know? It's like I'm on Howard Stern. How do you know all this information? This is fantastic. You've done all your homework. Wow. Yeah, I did. In 2014, in fact, I was shooting the web series Made Right Here, which part of it we did in Nashville. And we were back in South Carolina, and I got a phone call from my doctor saying, we had detected a heart murmur, and you need to get back to Salt Lake. We need to discuss this. And so I found out that I had this moderate to severe heart murmur from the cardiologist. And he said, yeah, your heart could give out. We're going to need to keep an eye on this, because I wasn't feeling any symptoms. And I said, well, shouldn't we just do surgery now? And he goes, no, you could get hit by a bus in a week. I said, well, nice bedside manner, doc. Like, what the heck? And he said, the point being, he's like, we're going to wait. We're going to monitor it with echoes and watch what you eat, exercise, watch for symptoms, and we're just going to keep an eye on you. So for 3 years, I hit the gym hard, and I got really healthy. And then in 2017, we were just getting back to work on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and the cardiologist called me in, and they said, well, your last echo shows that your left ventricle doubled in size. Your ejection fraction has increased. We need to get you into surgery because you're going to go into congestive heart failure. So, being the consummate filmmaker that I am, I was like, well, I've been off work for a few months. I just got back to LA. I'm getting ready to do this show again. We got another season. I can't go for heart surgery now. I lose my job. How about we do this in March when I'm done with the show? He said, no, we need to do this now. I said, well, how about Christmas? Because I'll be off for a couple of weeks. Could we fit it in there? They said, we're talking about heart surgery. No, you don't just fit it in there. This isn't like takeout. You could be gone by Christmas. And that was when it hit me. I thought, wow, they're talking about real life and death here. So that experience changed my life, frankly. I went in, it was 100% successful. They repaired the valve instead of having to replace it, which means I don't have to go in 10 years again and do anything. It wasn't like a pig valve or a synthetic valve. But they did more operating than I expected. I thought it was going to be laparoscopic the way it was described to me, but they actually went through my side and cracked open my ribs and split me open. And I was on a heart and lung machine for 6 hours, which is really trippy to think about, that my heart wasn't beating and my lungs weren't breathing for that long, that it was a machine doing the work. And you go through that experience. And what I tell people is, you sort of resign yourself. There was a moment of no return for me, a moment of surrender, actually, as I was getting ready to go into the operating room. And after I had said goodbye to my wife and had talked everything over with the anesthesiologist and the doctor and getting ready to go in, I thought, okay, at that moment, there's nothing more I can do. There isn't another word to say. There isn't another dream to have. There isn't another hope. It's all up to God. It's in God's hands at this point. And either I'm going to make it through this, or there's going to be a fluke accident and I'm not. And you just sort of resign yourself. And it was a strange moment of peace and calm. And, it went very quickly. The 6 hours to me was a matter of minutes, and I was very groggy waking up, and I was in the ICU for, I think, 2 days, and then in the hospital for 3. And then I was home recovering for like 5 weeks. And it changed my life, because I had always been like this, humble and grateful and appreciative of things, but not as much. I think that the first time I was able to walk outside with our dog, who was going through chemo at the time, and then we had lost him that February. But to go outside and walk him and feel the sun and smell the freshly cut grass in the lawn and hear a plane and see a bird, it was so different than what it was before. And eating and drinking, it was like, I don't know, it just, everything tasted better and everything just seemed that much better. And it just made me think to myself, look, what we do for a living, you try to light the actress as best as you can light her. You try to light the set. You try to get the director all the coverage that they need so that the editors have everything to construct the story. You try to get the best camera move. You nail the focus. You're doing everything. But eventually you just have to say good is good enough, because we're never going to get it all perfect. And I think that experience helped teach me that. It just made me realize there's so much more to life. And yeah, I mean, it brought us all closer, my wife and my dog and and I don't know, I really appreciate having gone through it. It was a good, positive experience for me, and I feel very healthy. I could swim a mile now, and I can run, and I'm perfectly healthy, and I feel very, very fortunate.
That's amazing, man. And just that whole story, hit me right in the heart. So I really appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah, it's you're welcome. I'm happy to share it. I tell people too. Anyone who knows me will tell you that I'm a consummate. You probably have this in your notes since you have so much research. That I'm a consummate worrier. I love to worry about everything. When this pandemic hit, forget about it. It was horrible. My friends were going crazy with how much I was worrying about surfaces and germs. But the heart surgery taught me about faith and likening that to worrying. We all sort of face ourselves with, how am I going to do this thing next week or next month or next year? How am I going to get this job? How am I going to pay this bill? How am I going to achieve this goal? How am I going to, how, I don't know how, and we're so fearful. And, I was given the opportunity where I was told I had a heart murmur and we were going to wait, and we waited 3 years, and I worked out and I ate healthy, and I just tried to not think about it. And I never really did think about it. Now, looking back, right before I had the surgery, I was short of breath and I was feeling fatigued. I didn't think I had symptoms, but I just thought I was tired from work. But I had an opportunity to strengthen my body and my mind ahead of time for this surgery. And I was working for some incredible people at Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the producers, who said, absolutely, go and get your heart surgery, and your job will be here when you come back. You don't even need to worry about that. And if there's anything we can do, tell us. Now, I don't think you hear that often in the film business. I just, gone today, here tomorrow. We gotta have somebody else come in and take over. But they were so nice and generous, and the whole crew was incredibly supportive. I was getting all kinds of, the camera department sent me food and flowers, and I mean, everybody was just so supportive throughout the whole thing. And it gave me an incredible amount of time with my dog, who ended up dying that February. This was at the end of, so this was throughout September and part of October, and we lost him in February. But I got a lot of time with him while he was still healthy before he died from lymphoma. And I got to be home with my wife, and I got to do all these great things, recovering, reading and talking, connecting with friends over FaceTime. And it made me realize, you know what? Everything was laid out perfectly ahead of time, and if I had just had the faith ahead of time to know that it was all going to work. I mean, looking back, I go, well, yeah, see, it all worked out. It all lined up perfectly. That was the plan, and it all worked out perfectly. And I had a successful surgery, and it all worked out great. Well, if we just apply that moving forward, we don't know what's going on next week, next month, or next year. But if we just have faith to know that whatever is going on right now, it is going to work out the way it's supposed to work out for you. That's sort of what I live by. That is, I miss all my worrying and my little things, my little OCD things. That is my main thing. That's what drives me every day, is to just have that faith that it is going to work out for the best, one way or the other. You're going to meet the right people. You're going to have the right conversations. You're going to have the right experiences. You're going to fall down. You're going to get cinders in your knees. You're going to pick them out of there and get back up and keep walking and run again. You're going to do it because you have to. That's how you learn. You learn by falling down and getting back up again. You have to.
Amazing. Amazing. Rick, this has been such a tremendous time. Learned so much.
Yeah.
And I thought at the beginning of this that this conversation was going to make my day, and you did not let me down. Please,
thank you.
If you're listening to this, go check out Rick's work. Go check out everything he's doing with Macaroni Art, and check out him on social. Follow him. It's a journey worth following. And Rick, I hope me and you stay in touch. And
we will.
As I always say,
sure. We've got
go ahead.
New friends. We're new friends.
New friends for sure.
That's
new friends for life. So many things in common. And as I always say, I'm just an email, phone call, or text away if you ever need anything. And
likewise,
if I find you, drinks on me.
Okay, that sounds great. Take you up on that. All right.
All right, brother. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right.
Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Be good.
Bye.
Peace.